Now, it's been called, with justification, the worst treatment disaster in the history of the NHS. The hundreds of people infected, thousands in fact, infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated blood products in the 70s and 80s. Well, this morning, compensation has finally been announced for survivors and spouses. But there's anger from some children and relatives of those affected who will be missing out, for now at least. Our home editor, Jason Farrell, reports.
My name's Andrew Evans. I was infected through haemophilia treatment at the age of 5 with HIV and hepatitis C. I developed full-blown AIDS at the age of 16 and barely managed to survive to the age of 20.
Andrew is one of an estimated 4,000 victims who survived what's been labelled the worst treatment disaster in NHS history, where patients were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated blood products. It's thought around 2,400 people died. Many suffered in silence because of public attitudes to HIV.
The stigma was still so strong against those people, frightened me to death. And so I kept everything completely under wraps as far as that was concerned. I told nobody at school. I didn't tell even my best friends about it until it became absolutely apparent that there was something going on, that I was ill and I couldn't hide it anymore.
The evidence I shall give
shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
After decades of campaigning, an inquiry was launched in 2018. Former health secretaries and a prime minister gave evidence, no one accepting blame or the argument for compensation.
What had happened to them was incredibly bad luck.
But campaigners say it was incompetence, reckless blood collecting methods in the US and a lack of checks when imported to the UK. The inquiries recommended compensation, and now the government has announced each victim will get £100,000.
Obviously it's a very welcome sum of money. If you split £100,000 over 40 years of being infected, it's £2,500 a year. It will help at the moment for me personally to do what I want to do most, which is to secure my family's future. But I'm also very aware of the people that this doesn't deal with at the moment.
I'm Lauren Denise Palmer, and I lost both my parents back when I was 9 years old.
Lauren was orphaned by the scandal. Her father was given infected blood and died of AIDS in August 1993. He unknowingly infected her mother, who died in the same month. While spouses of victims will get compensation, parents who lost children or children who lost their parents won't get a payout.
How can they have this differentiation and this hierarchy between bereaved families? All their lives matter just as much as the next person. I haven't been able to lead a normal life as such, where I've got the stability of having two parents for support and to go through education and go to uni, be able to stay at home long enough to save, to put a deposit on a home. So I haven't done any of that.
This is a victory for people like Andrew, but decades late. And many, like Lauren, who've suffered, are still waiting for recognition. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, earlier in the programme, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Kit Malthouse, told us that although eligibility for payments is complex, those payments will get to people in the end.
There's no doubt about it that the many years of campaigning that lots of people put in should not have had to happen, right? There should have been, as far as I could see, an early acknowledgement that there had been an issue, that a tragedy, that a scandal had unfolded. My job now is to drive that through and make sure the money gets into people's hands as quickly as we possibly can. But look, there are more complicated circumstances than we are currently addressing around eligibility, not just infected and bereaved partners, but there are others, as you said, parents, children, other relatives. Now, that is more complicated, as Sir Brian Langstaff has said in his inquiry, and we will get to them in the end. As remember, this is an interim position. And I'm pleased
get to them in the end. I mean, that's the assurance that people are looking for.
Well, certainly that's where the inquiry is going, right? So when Sir Brian made the recommendations to the government, which we're fulfilling today, he did acknowledge that there would be disappointment in some other groups, that it was more complicated to work out eligibility and scope with them, but that in time we would get there.
Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, is back. Busy morning. Kit Malthouse, of course, Yvette Cooper a few minutes ago. We also spoke to Sajid Javid. Lots to talk about in terms of inflation, but just on inflicted. But to start with, I mean, they've been waiting 4 decades, some of them, for this.
And they have been waiting for a very long time for any government to take responsibility for what happened. That has now happened, and therefore some of the victims, many of course, 2,500 of them may have died already. Those who are surviving or are spouses of those who have survived will get compensation. As to those who are not eligible, such as Lauren Palmer, who you saw in Jason's report there, who lost both of her parents, Kit Malthouse was suggesting that when this whole inquiry by Sir Robert Francis ends next year, she may be covered by this framework for compensation may be extended, but it wasn't a guarantee. He just said this whole issue is not wound up yet. Yeah. So those who are not eligible may be in the future. But I think after so many years of campaigning, the fact that some people are left out will be bitterly disappointing.